Welcome everybody, Patrick Cadey here, and what is the point of this video? Well, the point is exactly what I promised in the title, okay? I'm gonna share with all of you 11 core sales lessons that I personally learned over the last decade. So at least you don't have to go through the same learning curve that I've experienced, and you can learn all the lessons right away. But before we get started, you might know me, you might don't, so the question that you should ask yourself is this: why should you listen to me? Because I'm sure you're going to find a lot of videos on YouTube that are going to talk about how to boost your sales, but I believe that we have some credibility, okay? And why do we have credibility? Simple. We have generated over $200 million in sales for our clients. I'm the managing director and co-founder of a company called Community Collective. We have 160 people working at Community Collective, 140 of which work in sales. We are based here in Australia in several states. We also have an international presence. So when it comes to sales, we do know what we are talking about, and you can trust that everything that I'm going to share today is going to be accurate, okay? So pay attention to this video. We're going to unpack a lot in this video. And before I get started, I want to preempt one thing. Since I'm sharing 11 lessons today, I'm going to cover each lesson and I'm going to provide as much details as possible. But if you guys like what you see and you want me to dig deeper into one of these specific lessons, I can then create an additional video where we can discuss each lesson individually if that's what you like. But with that being said, okay, make sure that you take a lot of notes and let's get started. The first lesson that I want to share with everybody today is the following one, which is 90% of communication is nonverbal, okay? And this is especially important if you are a beginner, because when we first start working in sales, what do we assume? Well, we assume the following: I need to learn the script, I need to learn the pitch, and I need to say everything correctly. I need to memorize my sales pitch word for word. That's the assumption that we make when we first start working in sales. However, when we make that assumption, we forget two very important things. Number one, the customer doesn't know the sales pitch. Okay, don't forget that one, because sometimes I see new salespeople literally overthinking it because they're like, oh my God, I just delivered the sales pitch, but I forgot one sentence. I forgot to say this in the close. I forgot to mention this in my presentation. Well, here's what I can tell you. Even if you have forgotten something, it doesn't really matter because the customer doesn't know the pitch. The only person who does is you, okay? So don't overthink it and don't be too paranoid. But second of all, guys, if you focus too much on what it is that you say, and you concentrate too much on what it is that you say, guess what's going to happen to your face expression, okay? Your face is going to look very serious, something like this, right? Because when we focus on what we say excessively, that's what our face expression looks like. In reality, we forget a very simple rule, that once again, people don't really care about what you say, but they care about how you deliver the message. How important is nonverbal communication? Well, let me tell you one thing. I was watching a documentary on Netflix about Donald Trump, and in one of the episodes, okay, there was one guy that was training Donald Trump to run for presidency. And this guy said to Donald Trump this. He said, Donald, don't forget the number one lesson when it comes to running for president. People are not going to remember what it is that you say, but they're always going to remember how you make them feel. Okay? So if there is one guy out there that teaches this to people that want to run for presidency of the United States, I'm pretty confident in saying that that cardinal rule can literally apply to everything. People are not going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you make them feel. And how you make them feel comes from your nonverbal communication. Don't forget that one. What is nonverbal communication? Simple. That's your body language and that's your tonality. The way you deliver the message is going to trigger a certain amount of emotions in the other party. Okay? When it comes to nonverbal communication, it's a very, very extensive topic because I'm not gonna lie. If you wanna fully master your body language, you wanna be in control of your overall body, and if you wanna fully master your tonality, that's gonna be a journey. It's not something that you're gonna learn overnight, and it's not something that is gonna come to you right away. Realistically, the only way to master tonality and body language is by recording yourself, watching yourself, listening to yourself, reading a lot of books, and over time, with a lot of practice, you're gonna get to that level of expertise. But for those of you that are beginners right now, what can you do right away to improve your nonverbal communication? Well, I'll give you a very simple trick, and the trick is the following. Just remember this one here, okay? That's all you need to remember. Physiology dictates mentality, which creates tonality. Now, what I just said sounds a little bit complicated, but in reality, what does that mean? Physiology is your body language, your body posture. So that means that your physiology, the body language that you have, the way you position yourself, is going to dictate your mentality, meaning how you feel about yourself, and how you feel about yourself is going to dictate how you speak. Okay? So if you want to improve your nonverbal communication, if you want to exceed, and if you want to excel with your tonality, what should you do? Just focus on your body language. Make sure that when you're selling something, even if you're selling something on the phone, don't sit down with a negative body language. And what is a negative body language? Think about situations when you're sad, situations when you're literally crying. How do you sit on a chair? You probably lean forward a little bit. Okay, you definitely do not smile, you look down. Well, guess what? If you sit with that body language, you're gonna send a message to your brain that goes as follows. I'm sad right now, because whenever I sit like this, I'm always sad. And that's what your brain is gonna get from this situation. Your brain is gonna get the message that you're sad, and guess what's gonna happen to your tonality? It's gonna come across very sad too, and therefore you're not gonna make a lot of sales. So my number one advice is this. Whenever you are on a sales call, or if you're speaking to people one-on-one, always focus on your body language. And let me give you a few rules here, okay? Make sure that your back is very straight. Make sure that you throw your shoulders back. Make sure that you push your eyebrows up, and make sure that you got a big smile on your face. Because I challenge you right now, right? If you just stand straight, you throw your shoulders back, you push your eyebrows up, and you have a smile on your face, try to do that and think something negative at the same time. It's almost impossible, because when you have this body language, you're sending a message to your brain that goes as follows. I'm happy right now. So you fix your body language, okay? That's going to send a message to your brain that you're confident, that you're happy, and therefore you're going to speak in a certain way. Okay? So do not forget, physiology dictates mentality, which creates tonality. And that's how you can improve your nonverbal communication right away. Sales lesson number 2. What are we talking about right now? This is a major one, and this is not something that people teach all the time, okay? Because in sales, we always talk about objections, yeah? And we know it, right? For those of you that have been working in sales for some time, okay, we know how painful objections can be sometimes. Okay? And you are out there, you know, you feel that there is a sales presentation that is going perfectly, everything is flawless, you're confident that the customer is going to say yes, but right at the end, they give you that objection that you're not very confident with, and then the sale is not going to go through. Now, here's the thing that I'm going to tell you. The main objection that you're going to face in sales is your own internal objection, the objection that you have yourself. Let me expand on this. Let's pretend for a second that you're doing cold calls, okay? So you're working a lot on the phone. But at the same time, you are the type of person yourself that will never speak to a stranger on the phone. You're that type of guy, you're that type of girl, right? If you receive a phone call from a number that you don't know, you pick up, you ask, hey, who am I talking to? And when you identify that the person on the other side is not somebody that you're familiar with, you hang up the phone right away. You're that type of person. Well, if that's you, more than likely what you're experiencing right now when you do cold calls is exactly the same. People pick up the phone, you say a couple of words, but right away they hang up the phone and they catch you right there and then. And you're sitting there wondering and pondering, why is that happening? Well, it's simple. I repeat one more time. The main objection that you're going to face in sales is the objection that you have yourself, your own internal objection. But then the question becomes, how is it possible that because I have an internal insecurity, an internal concern, an internal objection, customers give me exactly the same objections? How is that possible? It's simple. And do not forget this statement. This is crucial. Write this down. The reason why you get exactly the objection that you are personally concerned about is because people can feel you before they hear you, okay? So if you are the type of person that will never entertain a conversation with a stranger on the phone, guess how you sound when you're asking people to entertain a conversation with you. It doesn't matter what you say on the phone call. The way you sound is probably going to be insecure. Okay? You're probably not confident, and you're just giving them the feeling that you shouldn't be there. It doesn't matter what you say on the phone, but the way you sound through your nonverbal communication is probably something along these lines. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here. I don't really want to bother you. This is not what you say. Okay? It's not what you say, but what they feel is that. And therefore, they hang up the phone on you. Does that make sense so far? Let's say that you're the type of person, I don't know. Let's just say that you're doing door-to-door sales for a second, okay? We have teams here working in door-to-door, and as part of your sales process, it gets to the point where you're going to ask the customer to give you the credit card in order to finalize the sale. But let's just say that you are the type of person that would never, ever, in a million years, give your credit card to a stranger when you first encounter them. So you have an internal objection, right? Because you would never give your card away. So here's what's going to happen when you're doing door-to-door sales. You're going to have a perfect sales pitch, a perfect presentation. Everything is going amazingly. But then you get to the stage where you need to ask for the card, and guess all of a sudden what's going to happen? Okay, what's going to happen is this. You're going to change subconsciously. You won't be aware of this. But because you are so concerned about it, because it's something that you wouldn't do yourself, you are going to reflect that insecurity onto the customer, and that's exactly the objection that they're going to give you. In reality, what's going to happen is this. Something all of a sudden is going to change in your body language. Something all of a sudden is going to change in your tonality. And the customer is going to detect that because, I repeat, people can feel you before they hear you. So all of a sudden, you're behaving differently. All of a sudden, you sound a little bit strange. All of a sudden, there is a change in your behavioral pattern. And guess what? Since people can feel you before they hear you, when you ask for the credit card, what is the customer going to say? Guess what? You know what? Actually, no. I don't want to give you my card. Maybe I don't do it today. And you're going to keep facing that objection again and again and again. So, do you want to find out if you have personally an internal objection, and are you interested in knowing what that internal objection may be? Well, how can you do this? Simple. Start tracking all the objections that you receive on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. And what you're going to find is this. There's going to be an objection there that you're going to receive much more compared to all the other ones. Chances are that objection that you receive much more than the other ones, it's your own internal objection that you need to overcome yourself. Okay? This is very valuable, by the way. Again, they don't teach this very often, but this is so valuable. Okay? So when I start training people, the first thing that I do, I remove their own internal objection that they have themselves. So how can you overcome your own internal objection? Well, it's very simple. Don't forget this. As human beings, we love to have consistency between what we say and what we do. Okay? So in order to overcome your own internal objection, you simply need to do it yourself. What does that mean? If you are the type of person that would never give the credit card to a stranger on the first encounter, guess what you need to do? The next time that somebody knocks at your door, whatever the product is, just buy it. Just buy it. Take a leap of faith and be like, here you go. Here's my card. You're going to shake. You're going to freak out. You're going to believe that that's the end of the world. Okay? But once you have done it yourself, you're going to be much more comfortable asking other people to do exactly the same. Because again, we want consistency between what we do and what we say. So that's one thing that you can do right away to overcome your own internal objection. Realistically, it's the only way. You need to do it yourself. Once you have done it yourself, you're going to be much more comfortable asking other people to do the same thing, and people are going to feel that, and therefore they're going to give you that objection much less. So don't forget lesson number 2, extremely, extremely important. Moving into lesson number 3. Okay, this is powerful, by the way. It's another one. I love objections. I do. Because the reality is this. Once you master objection handling, that's when you create real freedom in sales. If you're not a master at overturning objections, you're not a salesperson. You're just a slave. Yes, because our job in sales realistically is to overturn objections. If you don't know what you're doing when it comes to objection handling, you're a slave and you're living in fear. Because guess what? You're always going to receive objections. But why are you always going to receive objections? Well, let me tell you why. No matter how good your sales pitch, no matter how good your nonverbal communication may be, no matter how good your product or service may be, and obviously what I'm about to say applies way more to cold calling, okay? If you are on the phone, if you're knocking on doors, if you're doing this type of sales, no matter how good you are, more often than not, you're going to receive an objection. No matter what. Why are you going to receive an objection, by the way? Okay, why is that? Simple, because some of the biggest human fears, okay, at the top there are two big human fears. And these human fears are the following. People are very afraid of making the right decision, and people are very afraid of losing money. That's how people are. And therefore, when people are afraid to make the right decision, and when people are afraid to lose money, they decide not to decide. Because at least if they don't decide, they're not going to lose any money, and they're not going to make the wrong decision. It's as simple as that. So when you're selling your product, or when you're selling your service to a prospect, guess what you're asking people to do? Well, you're asking people to overcome those two fears, right? Is that fair to say? Because realistically speaking, when they buy your product or service, they could potentially face both of these obstacles. Your product may not be the right product for them, and therefore they're actually making the wrong decision. Or your product could cause potentially a financial loss, and therefore they could potentially be losing money. So since that's what you're asking people to do, 95% of the times when you're asking people to make a decision, when you're asking people to book their appointment, when you're asking people to buy your product or your service, whatever it may be, guess what you're going to receive? You're going to receive an objection. That's just what's going to happen. Okay? So if you are in sales and you're afraid of objections, just keep this in mind. If you don't learn how to overcome objections effectively, you're only going to be able to capture 5% of your market potential. Because statistically and in average, when you close people for the first time, 95% of the times you're going to get an objection. So we have two options here. We're either going to hope that the objection is never going to come, which is not going to happen, or we're going to get better at overturning objections. We are going to improve our overall understanding towards objections. So I suggest option number 2, obviously, right? So what do we need to know? 99% of the objections that you receive after closing a prospect for the first time are false. And why are they false? Because it's just a self-defense mechanism. Like I said, the human brain at that stage is just afraid. When you're asking them to make a decision right there and then, they're facing two fears. Well, potentially they're making the wrong decision, potentially they're losing money, and therefore they're just going to tell you something. They're just going to give you some sort of excuse to justify why they're not ready to make a decision right now. Like I said, though, it's an excuse. 99% of the time, that excuse is actually false. So, the cardinal rule here, and pay attention to this one. I learned this a long time ago from Grant Cardone, actually. A very valuable lesson is this. Do not treat sales objection as valid until you further investigate. Okay? So, to start with, when you receive the first sales objection, you just need to disregard the validity of the objection itself, and you're going to treat the objection as false. Let me explain. So, what can you do? What can you do when you receive the first sales objection? Okay? A very simple template that I like to teach that can be applicable to most industries is the following. When I receive the first sales objection, I don't acknowledge, I don't further investigate that objection because I'm just assuming that the objection is invalid. I'm just acting as if the objection is false. So what do? I follow a 5-step process. And the steps are the following. First of all, I give the prospect reassurance. Then I deflect the concern. Then I re-impulse the prospect with additional value. Then I minimize the commitment. And then I close again. So I repeat, reassurance, deflect, re-impulse, minimize the commitment, and close again. So let me give you an example right here. Okay, let's just say this. Let's just say that you are on a sales call. Let's just say that you are an appointment setter and you're trying to close somebody to book a free consultation with your company to then hopefully upsell them to be able to buy your product, okay? You're on a sales call, everything is going amazing, you get to the end and you say, perfect, let's book in a free consultation with our team, and then the prospect goes, look, it sounds good, Patrick, but I just want to think about it. Just give me some time, I'll give back to you. At this stage, you got a couple of options. Option 1, you can acknowledge the objection, okay? And you can ask something along the lines, well, I hear what you're saying, Simon, but what do you need to think about it so at least I can help you? What is it? Give me a little bit more insight. That's what a beginner will do. Because when you ask the prospect, what do you need to think about it, guess what's happening right now? Now they're actually thinking about what it is that they need to think about. They just gave you a simple excuse, okay? Remember, 99% of the first objections that we receive are false. But if you're digging deeper, if you're acknowledging the objection that they're giving you, and you ask something along the lines, what is it that you need to think about it so at least I can help you, now you make them think. So they're actually thinking. They're like, well, now that you ask, what do I actually need to think about it? Well, now that you mention it, the price is too high. Now that you mention it, I don't know if I want to do it for 12 months. I need to think about that. So now they're going to come up with a lot of different concerns. They're going to get confused. And remember, a confused mind doesn't buy. Do you like that option? I personally don't. I tried that at the beginning of my career. Trust me, it doesn't pay many dividends. Or we can go for option number 2 and follow the 5 steps template that I explained before. So Robert says, Patrick, everything sounds great, but I want to think about it. And you say this. Of course, Robert, I hear what you're saying. You just met me, so I'm not surprised that you need to think about it. Here's what I propose. Let me tell you the last thing before I let you go that I forgot to mention before. So at least when you sit down and when you're thinking about what it is that we discussed today, you got all the information that you need to make the final decision. How does that sound to you, Robert? Yeah, Patrick, that sounds good. Awesome. Look, what I forgot to mention, Robert, and the true beauty of what we do here is that when we book somebody for a free consultation, just with the free information that we give away, in average, our clients are making an extra $500,000 a year. I didn't tell you this before, and I do apologize. And that's just with the free consultation alone with information that you're not paying for. So, Robert, I don't know about you, but to me personally, when you compare a 45 minutes consultation call to potentially make an extra $500,000 a year, 45 minutes doesn't sound that much anymore, does it? No, when you put it like that, it doesn't. Exactly. Look, we do this together, Robert, okay? Believe me on this one. Let me book the free consultation phone call for you, and trust me, by the time that you're done with that free consultation, you're going to be very happy that you have done it. So how do you spell your last name, Robert? Let's go ahead with this. Boom. And that's when the magic actually happens. So what did I do here? I gave the prospect some reassurance, and I said, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Of course you need to think about it. You just met me. Right away, I deflected the concern, did I not? And I said what? Robert, let me just do this. I'm going to tell you one last thing before I go. So at least when you sit down and you think about it, you got all the information that you need to make a final decision. How does that sound? That's called deflection. Then I re-impulse the prospect with something additional. And I re-impulse by saying, you know what? What we found is that in average, our clients, after going through the free consultation, they make an extra $500,000 a year, which obviously is pretty good, is it not? So that was a re-impulse. Then I minimize the commitment. And how do you minimize the commitment? It's very simple. Robert, when you think about it, a 45 minutes consultation compared to potentially make an extra $500,000 a year doesn't sound that much anymore, does it? Look at my head, doesn't sound that much anymore, does it? Especially if you're on a video call. But even if you're on the phone, do it anyway. Move along. Like I said, people can feel you before they hear you, right? Doesn't sound that much anymore, does it? Now, when you put it like that, it doesn't. Okay? And then I close again. And when I close again, I give a lot of reassurance here at that stage. And I say, Robert, we do this together. Okay? We do this together. Let me walk you through the process. And trust me, by the time that you're going to be done with the free consultation, you're going to be very happy that you listened to me today. How do you spell your last name? Okay? Follow this process right here, and you're going to see your sales, okay? Especially if you're an appointment setters, especially if you're doing door-to-door sales, if you're doing B2B sales, if you're dealing with a cold market. Follow this process right here, and you're going to see your sales literally skyrocket. Okay? This process right here was a combination of information that we put together from Jordan Belfort and also some of the experience that we have developed over the years, and we teach this template literally to everybody working here. Okay? So if you do this correctly, what can happen as a consequence of doing that? Listen, if you do this correctly, you can increase your sales volume up to 65% more just by doing this correctly. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? And then if you learn how to overcome additional objections, you're just going to increase your sales volume more and more and more and more. But the lesson that I want you guys to take away from today, without going too much into details, and like I said at the start, if you comment something below and you say, Patrick, please, can you make another video about this specifically? I will make that video, okay? I'm here to help you. I'm here to serve you. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe, because every single week, I'm just going to release additional value when it comes to direct sales, leadership, building sales teams. So if that's what you do, subscribe, follow us on all the channels, because we are going to give a lot of value, okay? So if you want another video about this, I will do it. But the main takeaway from today, the main lesson is this. Do not treat objections as valid until you further investigate. Remember that one. And remember, the 99% of the objections that you receive the first time when you attempt your close for the first time are false. Do not believe them. Now, you may be sitting there arguing with me, and you're like, but Patrick, how do you know this? What if the objection is real? Well, let me give you an analogy that you're going to understand, okay? I'm sure that you have some friends, yeah? Okay. And when you have friends and you know them very well, they don't even have to tell you when they're down. You can see it. So let's pretend for a second that you're meeting your best friend, okay? The name of your best friend is Jimmy. And Jimmy is walking like this. You can clearly see that Jimmy is sad. And you say, Jimmy, what's wrong? What's happening, man? And Jimmy goes, no, man, it's all good. It's all good. Nothing is wrong. Would you believe him? Do you stop right there and then and say, it's all good then. You said that everything is good, so I believe you. You're not going to do that, are you? What are you going to do instead? Nah, come on, man. Like, I can see that something is up. What's going on? Tell me. You can tell me everything. Nah, look, man, it's all good, like I said. Are you going to stop right now? Probably not, right? Because you see that something is wrong. So what are you going to do? Jimmy, come on, man. We grew up together. Like, I know you, brother. Like, tell me, what's wrong? I'm your friend. Talk to me. All right, man, look, I didn't want to tell you, but what's happening is ABC. That's the same. That is the same. The same way as you wouldn't believe the first thing that your best friend is going to tell you when they're down applies to the customers out there. Just don't believe them. It's not that people are malicious. It's not that people want to lie to you. Like I said at the beginning of this third lesson, it's a self-defense mechanism. And once you understand the psychology behind objections, overturning objections and deflecting objections and disregarding objections until you further investigate, is going to be much easier. Wow, what an important lesson. But I feel that right now we can move on and we can actually move into lesson number 4. Okay, I love this one, right? I love this one. And this one is especially applicable if you are at the beginning of your career or if you are intermediate. However, even if you are very advanced, it's always a good reminder, and definitely it's a very good concept to master if you want to train a lot of salespeople with a lot of speed. The analogy that I like to give is the following, okay? Sales is like a video game. Sales is like a video game. I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 33 years old. I might be a little bit older than you. I don't know how old you are. But I remember growing up, there was a console called Super Nintendo. You guys may be too young, but the controller of that console looked something like this, okay? You moved around, and then on this side, you had 3 buttons. It was very simple. It was one of the first consoles that came out. We loved it. We used to play Super Mario. But the console was very simplistic. Only 3 buttons. That's it. Sales is exactly the same thing. So if you want to master sales, you only need to master 3 buttons. That's all you got to do. And what are the 3 buttons of sales? Simple. In sales, we have work ethic, attitude, skills. That's the end of it. That's the end of it. When you're playing the sales game, just pretend for a second that sales is a video game. The controller that you have to dictate your results is exactly the same as the Super Nintendo. But when you're going through your sales day, it's exactly the same. Okay? You're going to move around on this side here, and then you have 3 buttons that you need to master, and depending on your level of mastery, when it comes to those 3 buttons, you're either going to generate amazing results or you're going to lose. Now, when I press the work ethic button, when I press that button a lot, what is that going to do? That's going to allow me to speak to more people. That's going to allow me to fill my pipeline. That's going to allow me to increase the sales volume. The first advice that I give to people is always the same, okay? Speak to more people, man. Especially when it comes to cold calls, especially when it comes to knocking doors. Like, people don't speak to enough people. They make 10 phone calls, they make 50 phone calls, 100 phone calls, they knock 100 doors, and they think that that's enough. And you can make 300, 400, 500 calls a day. You can knock 500 doors if you want to. Okay, so increase your level of work ethic. The harder you work, the more people you're going to talk to. And the more people you're going to talk to, the more likely you are to actually make some sales. However, some people say the sales is a numbers game, right? You want to make more sales, play with more numbers, and you're going to make sales. I disagree with that. Okay? Numbers is a prerequisite of making sales. But it's not a numbers game, because work ethic alone is not going to allow you to succeed. Do you follow me so far? Because if you're working very hard, but you don't know how to communicate with people, your nonverbal communication is completely off, you don't have the basic foundations of human interaction, you're not going to be able to sell, regardless. So that's why we have the second button. The second button is called attitude. Okay? And we're going to go through this later on, so I'm not going to expand right now too much on attitude. But when you press button number 2, when you're pressing attitude, guess what's going to happen? Guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a better first impression. It's as simple as that, okay? When you press the button attitude, that means that your physiology is perfect. And remember, when your physiology is great, what's going to happen to your mentality? You're going to feel better about yourself. And because you feel better about yourself, you're going to speak in a certain way. And because you speak in a certain way, is your first impression going to be better or worse? Well, you know the answer to that question. Your first impression is going to be much better. So, when I push the attitude button, what is the outcome of that? Well, the outcome is simple. I'm going to be able to deliver more sales presentations. People are not going to cut me off at the beginning. Okay? People are not going to cut me off at the beginning of the conversation. I'm going to be able to deliver my sales presentation. So what's going to happen now? Well, if you're working very hard, right, and you're speaking to a lot of people, and you have an amazing attitude, your physiology is amazing, your mentality is great, your tonality is flowing perfectly, are you going to make some sales? Absolutely. But is that enough to achieve your maximum potential? Absolutely not, because there is a third button, right? And the third button is skills. Obviously, if you want to do more sales, you also need to get better. You need to master things like the template that I gave you before. You need to get more technical. However, and I know this for a fact because I've done it myself, even if you don't have skills, because let's be honest here, we're not idiots. I always say this to people, right? When they start working in sales, they're like, I don't know anything about sales. I'm like, that's a lie. I always ask this question to people. I always ask, have you been on a date before? Yeah, I've been on a date. Do you have at least one friend? Yeah, I have at least one friend. Have you ever made somebody laugh before in your life? Yeah, I've done that. Well, then you know how to sell, yeah? Is that fair to say? If you've been on a date before, that means that you successfully managed to sold somebody on coming in a date with you. Have you not? If you've been on a relationship before, if you are in a relationship right now, guess what you've done? You sold the other person to love you. That doesn't happen naturally, okay? You need to behave in a certain way. You had to show the best side of yourself to the other person to start with. You had to care about your first impression. I'm sure that when you went to the first date, if you have a partner right now, and you look back at your first date, I'm sure that you went in that first date, wearing something nice. I'm sure that before going out on the first date, you checked yourself out. And you made sure that you look presentable. Is that fair to say or not? It is. So you made sure that your first impression was right. So regardless, even if you say, I don't know anything about sales, you do. You do. We're not idiots. We all know how to sell. That's why I say this, that work ethic and attitude alone are going to enable you to do sales. But when you add the skills on top of work ethic and attitude, what's going to be the result is this. You're going to be able to do more sales. But people believe that without this, you're going to do zero sales. Absolutely wrong. And how do I know that? I'll tell you how. I came in this country, Australia, 10 years ago, okay, as an immigrant. When I first landed, I'm Swiss Italian, by the way. I forgot to mention, I was raised in Switzerland, okay, but my family is Italian. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Italians are not very good with languages. Surprise, surprise, right? Shocking. So for me, when I first came here, English wasn't my language. I couldn't communicate. And to be honest, I couldn't understand people, all right? So my skills were very limited. But I came here with a huge work ethic, and I came here with a lot of positivity. So even before I learned any of those, I was making sales already. So you can make sales with the first 2 buttons, but as you push this button here more, as you get better, you're going to be able to improve your conversion, and you're going to be able to make more sales. I hope it makes sense so far. I hope that everybody is still with me. Here's the main takeaway from this lesson, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're starting out in sales. Hear me out. Attitude is a given, okay? If you're coming into sales, you need to understand that the moment that you start working in sales, you lose the right to lose your attitude. I repeat, the moment that you start working in sales, you lose the right to lose your attitude, because that's what you do in sales. In sales, you are paid to deal with negatives rationally. Yes, you're gonna be rejected. It's part of the job. It is what it is. So attitude is a given. But hear me out on this one. You can always overcompensate a lack of skills with a lot of work ethic, but you can never do the opposite. I repeat, you can always overcompensate a lack of skills with a lot of work ethic, but you can never do the opposite. What does that mean? That even if you know nothing about the technical aspect of sales, as long as you're willing to be extremely resourceful, okay? As long as you're willing to work harder and be more committed than anybody else, you will be able to get away with it. But if you're very skilled and you're extremely lazy, that's not gonna work out, okay? So don't forget that. As you accumulate more resources, because your skills are resources, you need to make sure that you keep your level of resourcefulness. I did another video about this. The number one reason why people start losing in sales as they progress, as you know, it's a paradox. The more time people spend selling, sometimes the less sales they do. Pretty paradoxical, isn't it? Why does that happen? Because initially when they first start working in sales, they have no resources, they don't know anything, and therefore they need to overcompensate the lack of resources with a lot of resourcefulness. Meaning, just in more simplistic terms, that they're overcompensating a lack of skills with a lot of work ethic. But then what happens over time? Well, over time they do accumulate their resources. Now they know a lot of stuff, but they decrease the level of resourcefulness. They get lazy. So the net positive remains the same. Smart people, what do? As they accumulate resources, they also increase the level of resourcefulness, okay? They act with the same mentality they used to have on their first day, on their first week, on the first month, and then they also increase the level of resources, and that's when the magic really happens. I hope that this makes sense. Again, super important lesson. The main takeaway from lesson number 4 is this: do not forget, you can always overcompensate a lack of resources with a lot of resourcefulness, but you can never do the opposite. And as you accumulate resources, make sure that your resourcefulness also goes up, okay? Make sure that your resourcefulness also goes up. Tony Robbins talks about this all the time. It's not about the lack of resources. Resourcefulness is the ultimate power. I remember hearing that a long time ago. That really stuck with me, and I'll live by that principle, okay? I hope that you guys got a lot of value from this one. This is another powerful lesson. But moving into lesson number 5. Wow, we're not even halfway there. How much value are we getting from today's video? Lesson number 5, simple. Nobody likes a salesperson, or nobody likes salespeople, but everyone respects authority. Nobody likes salespeople, but everyone respects authority. Isn't that true? This is not a new concept, okay? If you follow people like Grant Cardone, or you follow people like Victor Antonio, you follow people like Jordan Belfort, you have read the books from Brian Tracy, we already know this, okay? People respect authority, and that's what you want to become in sales. Why do people respect authority? It's simple. Because since we are little kids, we are conditioned to respect authority. That's what we do. When we go and see a doctor, we're not like, I'm going to challenge your authority. I think I know what's wrong with me. We just listen. When we go to school, we know that we need to respect the teacher. When a police officer is stopping us on the road, we know that we need to respect that person. And when we are dealing with authority, most people tend to be very obedient because that's what we are conditioned to believe. So if you start your career in sales, you can leverage this aspect because you already know that if you can frame yourself as an authority and you can come across as a figure of authority, people are going to be more obedient and they're going to follow your instructions. Okay, When I say you can use this to your advantage, do not manipulate people into doing things that are wrong, because obviously sales skills are so powerful that sometimes they can be misutilized, right, in unethical ways. And we're not here to teach unethical sales skills, by the way. You need to use this power ethically. Make yourself that promise, make sure. But nobody likes salespeople, everybody likes authority. So for this lesson, I'm just a little bit afraid about this specific lesson because I can end up talking for the next 2 hours. So I'm just gonna give you an example of how I personally learned not to be a salesperson, but to be an authority. Okay. Here's how I learned. At the beginning of my career, when I first landed in Australia, I was selling alarm systems. That was my job. So I used to walk in every single business, okay? Every single business, one by one. I used to walk in, and my purpose, my goal, was to sell them an alarm system and also to pay for the monthly monitoring. That's what I used to sell. So when I started working in that company, the campaign wasn't going very well. People were severely underperforming. They found it very difficult to sell these alarm systems because, the company was hiring a lot of young kids. Most people working in that business were between the age of, I believe at the time, 20 to 25 years old. And those people on a daily basis went out there speaking to retail shops, okay, where the average business owner, more often than not, was over the age of 35 to 40 years old. So they didn't know how to adapt to business people, and therefore they couldn't sell too much. Well, I cracked it. I cracked the code, right? On my second week, I was enrolling the company, but at the time, I didn't even know why. I didn't know why I was making that many sales, and I couldn't understand why everybody else couldn't do what I was doing. Until one day, there was a guy, I'm not going to say his name because maybe he's watching the video right now. He came up to me and he said, Patrick, I want to ask you for some help, okay? Can you come out there with me? I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Can you watch me and come out there with me? So I went out there, and I saw the way he was selling. This is what he used to do. He walked into a business, okay, with his badge on, okay? Hear me out. What he was doing was this. He was wearing a badge. He was wearing jeans with a shirt that was tucked inside the jeans with a belt there, and he was wearing some average shoes with the badge there. He walked into a shop and he said this, "Hello, how are you?" "I'm good. What about you?" I'm very good, thank you. My name is," let's just say Jimmy. "My name is Jimmy. I'm from X security company. How's your day going, by the way?" "Yeah, it's good." "Awesome. So, we're just doing a campaign for alarm systems in the area. If you don't mind me asking, do you have an alarm?" "Yeah, we do." "And do you have the monitoring as well in the alarm that you have right now?" "Yeah, we do." "Awesome. So let me show you what we do." Nah, look, thank you very much. I'm fine with the alarm that I have. I don't want anything." "Okay, but look, just before I go, no, look, I'm fine. I don't want to be annoying, okay? I don't want to be mean, but please leave my shop. Like I said, I'm fine." "Okay, sorry." And then I left the shop, walked into the next one, did exactly the same thing. And I just watched him. And that's when he got me. I was like, wow, now I know what I'm doing differently. Because what I found was this. People were treating this guy very disrespectfully. By the time the day was over, after getting abused, 80, 90, 100 times in a day, well, he just didn't feel good with himself, right? Was going through very tough days, whereas people were treating me quite nicely. What was the difference, though? The difference was that I was coming across as a figure of authority, and it was coming across as a salesperson. Let me explain to you why, by the way. This was my pitch. And then he came with me, saw the way that I was pitching, and it was like, wow, okay, I'm not doing that. Here's what I used to do. First of all, my dress code was different, okay? So I had a full suit, three-piece suit with a tie. I looked extremely professional, okay? I didn't look like all the other salespeople. Second, I walked into a business, and this is what I did. I walked in and I say, good afternoon. My name is Patrick. I just have a question for you, if you don't mind me asking. I'm the National Security Manager from X company, and I sent here a couple of team members last week to talk to everybody about the security upgrades that we are doing. If you don't mind me asking, do you know if they actually managed to speak to you guys or they haven't? And the receptionist always said, I think so. Okay, if you don't mind me asking, I just need to be sure. Do you remember what they talked about? Like, do you remember what they mentioned to you, just to make sure that you guys talked about the right thing? Not really, but look, I think we are fine with our security. No, I believe you are, but look, Molly, with all due respect, I don't want to sound rude here, but I believe that when it comes to security, I should probably speak to the owner of the business. What do you think? Yeah, probably, no problem. So if you can call the owner, I'll wait right here. And that's what I used to do. And then the business owner came out a little bit confused, and he was like, I'm the business owner. What is this about? And I was like, nice to meet you. My name is Patrick. I'm the national security manager from X company. Like I said, we're here to talk to everybody about the security upgrades, but maybe it's better if you speak into your office. Okay, come into my office. And then once I sat in their office on the chair, after 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they actually realized that I was selling something, but then it was too late. Because I came across as a figure of authority, and I was literally demolishing everybody else. Because just picture this for a second. On one side, you had the guy that was like, hello, how are you? Do you have security? On the other guy, that was me, an authority, right? Because imagine if somebody comes from the government, okay? And by the way, I don't want to go in trouble here. I didn't try to impersonate anybody from the government. To a certain extent, I wasn't lying, was I? The only thing that was really truthful, I wasn't the national manager from that company. Okay, that wasn't real. But I was talking to everybody about the security upgrades that we were doing, right? So that was true. And it was true that we kept going back to the same areas. So more than likely, they could have spoken to some of my team members. Okay? So on one side, you had the salesperson. On the other side, you had me. So people, when they saw me, they were like, well, is this guy supposed to be here? Is he a security guy? Is this something that I'm supposed to know? Maybe we receive a communication about these security upgrades. Maybe we need to be aware. So we need to talk to him. And that's the difference in sales. Because when you come across as a figure of authority, you have an opening. And that's the main difference between being a salesperson and being a figure of authority, okay? People get pitched by salespeople on a daily basis. But if you are an authority, like I said at the beginning of this lesson, remember the main takeaway. Since we are kids, we are conditioned to listen to authorities. So if you can come across as an authority, people are going to be more obedient and you're going to make more sales. But do not manipulate people. Use this one here ethically. Let's move into lesson number 6, okay? Avoid logical-based traps. There is a guy that I really like. His name is Jeremy Lee Miner, I believe. I don't know if I pronounced this correctly, but I love that guy. Like, I think he's genius. I think that when it comes to sales training, in my opinion, he's probably the best out there. He's super technical. He knows everything about sales, and I love his approach. All right? And he talks about avoiding logical-based sales traps all the time. Okay, because what is a logical-based sales trap? Before I give you an example, I'm just going to give you a reminder here. Don't forget this. People always buy on emotions and they justify later on with logic, okay? But there needs to be a certain level of emotions involved in the sales process. Because if you don't trigger any sort of emotion when you're selling something to somebody, what's going to happen? Hey, they may agree with you. Maybe you can forcefully get them to say yes and put a signature on a piece of paper, but then you're going to walk away, and guess what they're going to do? They're probably going to cancel and they're not going to stick around. Okay, so you got to make sure that when you sell something to somebody, there are emotion involved or the sale is not going to stick. Let me give you a simple example, okay? Let's just say that you're going through the sales process. I'm going to use the same example that I used at the beginning. And I don't know, you're an appointment setter and you're booking somebody for a free consultation with your closing team, okay? You're getting at the end of it and they tell you, look, Patrick, to be honest with you, everything sounds good, but I need to speak to my partner. Okay? And then you say something along these lines. Look, I hear what you're saying, Robert. I get it. Okay? Before I let you go, can I just ask you one question if you don't mind? Sure, ask me. Look, you told me before that you and your business partner have been in business together for 10 years. Is that right? Yes, we have. So I would assume, Robert, that since you've been in business together for 10 years, you guys trust each other, right? Because 10 years is quite a long time. And I'm sure that to get where you guys are today, there is a lot of trust involved. Is that fair to say, Robert? Yeah, that's fair. Look, and also, since your business has a good size, I'm certain that you guys have a lot of bills and a lot of expenses that you pay on a daily basis for your business. Is that fair to say? And I'm sure that when it comes to these bills and these expenses, you don't call your business partner every time asking for permission. Is that right? Robert, what I want to say, this is exactly the same thing, right? This is exactly the same thing. You know that this is going to work. You know that this is going to work. And since you guys trust each other, I'm pretty certain that it's fair to say that when you're going to say to your business partner that you have decided to go ahead with this and to actually book a free consultation, since your business partner is somebody that trusts you, is not going to be upset with you. Is that fair to say? Yeah, that's fair. Awesome, man. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's book the free consultation. That was just a generic example that I just made up on the spot, by the way, okay? It wasn't premeditated or anything like that. But what you could notice from my example was simple. Everything made a lot of logical sense, did it not? Right? Everything was logical. I just got the customer to say yes and yes and yes and yes and yes and yes and yes many times. Everything made logical sense. And therefore, what I really did realistically, I funneled the customer down into a logical based trap. Okay, so if you are very skilled in sales, you're going to be able to do that. Yes, you're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to funnel people down a logical based trap. They're going to say yes. They're going to agree with what it is that you're saying. But more than likely, after doing something like this, what do you think is going to happen? Well, I tell you what do I think that is going to happen. I think that he's going to say yes. I think that he's going to agree to book the free consultation. You're going to send the invite for the free consultation, but then the prospect is going to cancel. Why? Because the prospect didn't buy with any emotion. The prospect bought with logic, and then it's justifying again with logic. That doesn't work. Okay? So what can you do instead? You can do something along these lines. Patrick, look, everything sounds great. I just need some time. I need to speak to my partner. Robert, to be honest, I'm very happy that you're actually saying that, right? Because you mentioned before that you and your business partner have been in business together for 10 years. Is that correct? Yeah, no, that's correct. Absolutely. Look, the last thing that I want to do, Robert, and I want to make myself clear here, I don't want to compromise the relationship between the two of you guys, because if you've done it for 10 years, I'm sure that there is a lot of trust involved, and therefore you guys need to speak before making important decisions. Is that the main point here? Yeah, Patrick, that's the main point. Awesome. Look, Robert, can I just share one thing with you before I let you go? Do you mind if I do that? No, Patrick, go ahead. Look, here's the bottom line, man. We've gone through everything together. And you told me before, this was you telling me, and you tell me if I'm right here, but you told me before that right now you're overworked, right? You told me before that right now you're not spending enough time with your family. And you told me before that the bottom line profit of the business is also not going in the right direction. We've gone through everything together, and you know for a fact here, like you know, based on everything that we discussed today, based on the research that you have already previously conducted, you know for a fact, man, that if this is going to work, it's going to give you that time that you want with your family, and you can actually spend more time with your kids, which you told me before was the main point of suffering here. It's going to allow you to rest a little bit more, right? Because you've been working your face off for the last 10 years. So you know that if this is going to work, you can actually achieve that. And we already know it, Robert. Like, based on our past successes, we know that we can at least increase your profit by 20%. Robert, that's the bottom line. So with that being said, you know that this is the right choice for you. And since your business partner does trust you a lot, once you explain all of this to your business partner, and once you make him understand what's involved in this process that we're going through it together, I'm sure that by the end of it, you guys are going to be fully on the same page, and your partner is going to be very happy with you. Is that fair to say? When you put it like that, Patrick, I think it's fair. Exactly. Look, Robert, let's do it together. I'll walk you through it. Let's book the free consultation, and I tell you what, if at any point between now and then your business partner wants to call me with additional questions, I'm available whenever to help you out, and I will be there. How does that sound? Awesome. So let's book it. Let's book it, man. Let's go ahead. Again, I'm making this shit up, okay? I'm not reading a script, okay? Actually, for those of you that may be thinking, you know, because sometimes that's what people say, that like you're just reading a script, a teleprompter or whatever, I'm going to show you. Okay, we're not reading any script. As you can see, the screen from my phone, there is only Emilia there. Emilia, you can say hi. Right? Well, I'm not reading anything. I'm making things up. So is what I said perfect? No. Okay, I'm just making it up. But what did you notice? What was the big difference between the two things? The second time was more emotional, was it not? It was. Because we were talking about his kids. We were talking about the fact that he was burned out. We were talking about the fact that the bottom line profit wasn't what it should have been. So I triggered some emotions on the other side. I gave a lot of reassurance. I said, you know what, if your business partner wants to call me between now and then, I will be free along the way. Was much more emotional. At the end, I said, we do it together. I walk you through the process. Trust me, you're not going to regret it. I said all of that, and I triggered a lot of emotions in the process. Therefore, when Robert is going to leave me, I built emotions, and later on, guess what Robert is going to do? He's going to justify the choice with logic. And here's what's going to happen. The business partner is going to come to Robert. They're going to have a chat. And Robert is going to say to the business partner, you know what? I decided to book a free consultation with this company. Maybe the business partner is going to say, why do you do that? It's just a waste of time. We've gone through this before. But because I built emotions in the process, Robert is going to defend that decision. He's going to fight for that decision. And he's now going to justify that decision with a lot of logic. And more than likely, he's going to say to his business partner, hear me out, Jimmy. I really believe that this is the right choice, and let me explain to you why. Because in all fairness, we do have problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. I had a conversation with Patrick. He seemed to be a great guy. We've gone through everything. My gut feeling said that this time may be the right choice. Just give me some faith here. And if it's not the right choice, after the free consultation, we don't do it anyway. When Robert does that, what do you think his business partner is going to say? All right, let's do it, man. I trust you. We're in business together. Let's go. Again, I don't want to overextend myself with this one here. And to be honest, guy, even though I provided a very good explanation, I don't like to take credit when people out there may be better than me at a specific topic. Again, Jeremy Leeminer is doing exceptional work when it comes to this one, so go and check him out, okay? Moving into the next lesson number 7. Lots of value here today, okay? I know this video so far, it's some work. We're going through a lot of stuff, and now we're going to go through lesson number 7. Remember this one. Numbers don't lie, feelings do. If you work in sales, you got to live by that mantra. I got another video of mine that you can see on my Instagram or on our company account as well. The name of the video is literally Numbers Don't Lie, okay? Beginners hate numbers. Beginners never want to face numbers. They don't like it. All right, beginners are always like, I hate math. I hate numbers. Professionals, they live by numbers. Okay? You want to run a sales team? You want to be a successful salesperson? You want to run a company? Get accustomed to liking numbers, otherwise you're going to struggle a lot. Because the reality is this, especially when you work in sales, there's going to be times where you're going to experience what we call sales slumps. There's going to be times when you're going to lose your self-esteem. There are going to be times that are going to be tough. There's going to be times where you're putting exceptional results, and then 1 week after, you feel that you were never able to do sales in the first place. That's what's going to happen. The more experienced you become, the less that's going to happen, but initially, you're going to fluctuate a lot. Sales could be an emotional roller coaster. That's the reality for a lot of people working in sales, okay? Here's the thing. When people go through these sort of struggles, and when people face challenges in sales, they tend to trust their own opinions. And the problem with that is this, 99% their opinions is wrong, unless you're very advanced. And even when you are very advanced, sometimes you may be falling into this trap. So what should you do instead? Don't trust your opinions, okay? Trust the numbers. Trust the numbers. And when I say numbers, what do I mean? Okay, this can change depending on the industry that you are in. But you need to know your sales funnel. Every single day, I teach to every salesperson working here to track their sales funnel. How many people have you talked to today? How many presentations have you done? How many people have you tried to close? How many proposals have you gone through? How many sales have you done? If you are in the appointment setting side, well, you know what your funnel is going to look like, okay? Now, based on this, what you need to know is this. Based on the industry where you're in, what is the optimal conversion from one section to the other? For instance, in your industry, if you speak to, 120 people today, the optimal conversion based on previous averages and based on previous data is, a 70% conversion from people spoken to presentations delivered. Then there's going to be an optimal conversion from presentation to closes, an optimal conversion from closes to proposals, and so on and so forth. So, instead of trusting your feelings, trust the data. If you're going through a challenge in sales, that's the first thing that you got to look at. Look at your pipeline. Look at your funnel. And ask yourself, am I hitting the right numbers here? Where exactly am I struggling? Where is the conversion off? Okay? Because here's the thing. When people are struggling in sales, they don't want to face the reality. They don't want to look at the numbers, right? And again, we got 160 people working here, 140 of which work in sales. But not just internally, we have coached many external companies as well. And when I see a sales team struggling, they come to me and they're like, Patrick, I'm finding it difficult lately. I'm not doing as many sales as I should. And then I ask them, what's the problem, man? And they say, look, I think As soon as they say, I think, I stop them right there and there. And I say, that is the problem. That is the problem. What do you mean that's the problem? I haven't even told you what the problem is. The problem is that you think that you know what the problem is. But you're not saying, I'm certain. You say, I think. We're talking about hypotheticals here. And if you're talking about an hypothetical and you're not certain about the problem that you need to target, you're never going to be able to overcome that problem. Is that fair to say? And they're like, well, yes. And then I say, look, instead of telling me what it is that you feel and what it is that you think, show me your sales funnel. Show me your pipeline. Let's go through the last 3 weeks. Show me how many people you've spoken to, how many presentations you've done, closes, proposals, sales. Show me all of that. And guess what usually the response is? I don't have that here right now. Oh, I tracked it, but I didn't track it every day. Again, when people struggle with sales, they don't want to look at the numbers because the numbers are going to tell them the truth. Don't forget this one. It's so important. Also, when it comes to this process, make sure that you always go from the left side to the right side, okay? Because when people struggle in sales, they tend to look at the complicated stuff. They're like, oh, you know what? I need to improve my overtures when they tell me this. I need to improve matching and mirroring. I need to improve at this profiling. Okay, before thinking about the complicated and the advanced topics, we got to look at the left side of the funnel. Sometimes the problem may simply be, I've got a lazy. My law of average is that I need to speak to 500 people a week. That's the average of the industry that I'm in. But now that I'm looking at it, over the last month, I'm only talking to 300 people a week. So there I was, thinking that I had a problem with my sales process, but in reality, the problem, it's always been the fact that I reduced my level of resourcefulness. But if you don't look at the numbers, you're not going to know that. Or you may be able to see that your problem is your conversion from people spoken to and presentations delivered. And if that's the problem, well, you got an issue with your first impression. So you can start asking yourself, why is your first impression off? And so on and so forth. Guys, I love numbers, okay? And that's always been a big point of difference for me personally, Patrick Adey, the way I do things. Everybody here knows. If you don't have your numbers, don't even talk to me, okay? So when it comes to this topic right here, I'm not gonna lie, I can talk about this for the next 14 days without sleeping. That's how passionate I am about numbers, but I'm gonna stop right here, okay? Again, if you want a full video about that, if you like to know more about how to break down and analyze your sales pipelines, how to understand the conversions better and what it is that you need to do about it, for each conversion, shoot me a message and I can deliver more value when it comes to that. Sounds good? I hope it does anyway because I'm going to do it anyway. So lesson number 7 is completed. We're going to look at lesson number 8. Lesson number 8. Selling and closing are not the same thing. Understand this one, okay? Understand this one. Selling and closing are not the same thing. Whereas a lot of people make the assumption that when you're good at selling, you're automatically good at closing. Not the same thing. Guys, I'm going to tell you a couple of things when it comes to this topic. I learned this lesson from Grant Cardone one more time. I remember I bought one of his courses 6 or 7 years ago. And Grant Cardone, during that course, said this. He said the closing represents 10% of your selling time, but 100% of your income and your future. How powerful is that? Closing represents 10% of your selling time, but 100% of your income and your future. It's a pretty powerful statement when you think about it. So a lot of people are very good at selling, okay? A lot of people that are amazing during their sales presentation, everything is going well, people like the product, but then they get to the closing stage, when they need to ask for a payment, when they need to ask for a yes, when they need to ask for an actual commitment, and guess what they do at the closing stage? They overextend themselves. They keep it very long. They over-justify why they're asking for money. And therefore, because they're doing all these things, because they're over-justifying, because they're keeping it too long, what are they really doing? Well, subconsciously, they're reflecting their own insecurities onto the customer. And therefore, because we change our behavior during the closing stage, the customer is going to say, well, man, everything sounds good, but I need to think about it. Make sense? Selling and closing are two different things. You don't believe me? I'll give you an example. Let's just say that you go to a Louis Vuitton boutique store today. You walk in, and let's just assume for a second that your income right now is, I don't know, $60,000 a year, okay? You walk in the shop, there is a beautiful jacket. You're there with your partner. You see this jacket, you're like, oh my God, look at that jacket, beautiful. You go there and you say, excuse me, can I try that jacket? They're like, of course you can try. You put it on, you check yourself out into the mirror, your partner is taking photo, and your partner is like, babe, like you look terrific, like you look majestic. This is fantastic. You were born for that jacket. And you're like, babe, I agree. Look at this jacket. It looks so beautiful. I love it. Are you sold on the jacket? You are, fully so. Then you go to the salesperson of the shop and you say, excuse me, just one question. Love the jacket. How much it is? And the salesperson says, sir, yeah, this piece is a beautiful piece. It's only $11,000. So all of a sudden, you don't like the jacket anymore. Makes sense? You were sold on the jacket, but you were not closed on the jacket. And therefore, you're not going to buy the jacket. But if it was very important to you, even if you don't have the money, if it was very important to you and you are actually fully closed on it, you will find the money. Because simultaneously, okay, if somebody calls you, okay, let's touch wood here. If somebody calls you, you're still making the same income, but somebody calls you and they tell you, hey, one of your loved ones is sick. They're very sick, so we got to do something about it. Are you sold on the fact that you got to do something about it? Absolutely, because you love that person. And they tell you, but unfortunately, the medical bill is going to be $11,000. Can you sustain that? What are you going to say? You're going to say, of course. You don't have the money, but you say yes. You're closed because it's way too important. Are you with me so far? And then you're going to get resourceful and you're going to find the money. You're not going to let a person down that you love. Remember that. But the jacket is not that important. So selling and closing, two different topics. Now, when it comes to the close, the main advice that I like to give, remember the 4 C's. Okay? The 4 C's of the close. But the 4 C's are the close needs to be clear, confident, concise, and calm. What a lot of people do when they close, they overcomplicate it. So people get confused. Okay? They're not clear. A lot of people make it too long. They over-justify themselves, okay? The close needs to be concise. You need to be confident. Make sure that you don't change your body language. Make sure that you don't change your tonality. And you need to be peaceful and calm. The close needs to be delivered with a neutral tone of voice. Don't sound too excited. Don't sound too sad. You gotta sit right there in the middle, okay? Closing. You want to really excel in sales, you need to spend a lot of time learning this because selling is simple, man. Selling is very simple. Like I said, most people are salespeople anyway. If you have a partner, you've been on a date, whatever, you sold something to somebody before, you understand how to sell people on something. But then closing, that's a whole different topic. Now, when it comes to closing, also remember this. You need to take objections extremely seriously. Because like I said at the beginning of this video, a lot of salespeople are slaves. Why are they slaves? Because they live in fear. They go out there selling products, selling services, hoping that that objection that they hate is not going to come to the surface. They're just going to hope for the best on a daily basis. And then when they're speaking to somebody and the objection actually comes, they feel defeated because they don't have the tools nor the knowledge to overcome that specific objection. Here's the beautiful news though. Okay, remember this. No matter what it is that you sell, okay, you can sell spaceships or you can sell pens. No matter what it is that you sell, the objections that you receive in sales are literally always the same. What objections are you going to receive? Okay, let's come up with the list. I can't afford it. I need to think about it. I need to speak to my partner. What else? I need more time. Can I have a brochure, which is a stall objection anyway? Can you come back in the future? I'm going to get back to you. I need to do more research. They're always the same. So you got a couple of options here. You're just going to hope that these objections are not going to come, or you're going to have more confidence in yourself. And since you know that the objections are literally always going to be the same, just learn them all and learn how to master them. Because once you master objection handling, you're truly going to be free. So we can move on right now. But again, the main takeaway, closing represents 10% of your selling time, but 100% of your income and your future. Moving into lesson number 9. We have 3 more lessons to go. We're actually going to keep those 2 very short and simple because the last lesson is quite extensive. For this one here, we're going to put another link below because I've already pre-recorded another video that is about this specific topic. So if you want to know more, you can watch that video. But to keep this very short and simple, sales is not a job, sales is a sport. Okay, that's my point. Sales is not a job, sales is a sport. So if you want to be a successful salesperson, you need to behave like an athlete. And what does that mean? Again, the link is going to be below. Go and check out the other video. But to cut it short and simple, an athlete divides their day or their matches or whatever it may be in 2-3 different parts. There is conditioning, then they play the game, and then they evaluate. If you want to be successful in sales, you got to do exactly the same. What I teach a lot of people is this. Every single day, you got to go through your conditioning phase. Meaning, before actually getting on the phone, before going out there and speak to real people in the real world and making real mistakes, okay, you got to do role play. That's what you got to do. Every single day, before your day starts, do role play. At least you can practice. At least you can get the mistakes out of the way before you're actually speaking to real people. And every single day, if you want to have a successful sales day, you need to condition your body and your mind to operate with the highest energy levels. Again, I talk about this in the other video, so it's important, okay, if you want to succeed in sales, that you start your day with a good basic routine. Okay, go to the gym, exercise, get some blood flowing, say to yourself some positive affirmations, and make sure that every single day before starting the day, you're at least role-playing for a little bit. Watch a couple of sales videos, go into the training platform, but at least have some practice. Then it's game time, okay? So when you're selling, when you're playing the game of sales, it's not time to wonder and ponder. The same way as an athlete, let's just say, I don't know, a basketball player in the basketball court, if the basketball player is playing the game, he wouldn't just sit there, wonder and ponder about how the game can improve. This is not time to wonder and ponder. This is action time. So in the morning, you condition yourself to have a good day, but when you play the game, you play. Do not wonder, do not ponder, do not overthink anything, just play. What I like to say to people in the office is this. In the office, I use my brain. In the field or on the phone, I lose my brain. I don't think, I do. I execute. And then at lunchtime and in the evening, I like to evaluate. This is what we teach to everybody here. When the day is over, remember the previous lessons, numbers don't lie. So when the day is over, you look at your pipeline, you look at your numbers, you evaluate the numbers, you evaluate all the different conversions, you look at the numbers and you ask yourself, is there anything that I can do tomorrow to improve and to get more sales? And you base that on numbers. Again, click the link below, and then goes without saying, guys, okay, there is a negative stigma attached to the sales industry. When we say sales, what do people think? All the times, oh, if you are in sales, you do drugs. If you are in sales, you party a lot. If you are in sales, you smoke a lot of cigarettes. Well, if you follow the stigma and you want to build a long-term successful and sustainable career, you're not going to succeed, okay? Because to succeed in sales, again, you need to have high energy levels. Good health and you have a lot of energy, you make more sales. If you're unhealthy and you have terrible habits, you're going to go through a lot of ups and downs and you're not going to be able to sustain a long-term, profitable career. I hope that this makes sense to everybody. So again, main takeaway from here, make sure that you behave like an athlete does. Lesson number 10. I'm going to keep this very short and simple, okay? The best way to improve is to record yourself. Again, numbers don't lie, and neither does footage. If it's on video and you can watch it, you know that whatever it is that you see is accurate. So what I teach to all the salespeople that we coach and train is to do two things. Number one, when you are on a high, what happens when people are on a high? What happens when people are building and experiencing a lot of momentum in sales? Usually what happens is this, they do nothing. They get very cocky. They just think that that's going to last forever. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this, there is another video called Building Momentum. So if you want to know how to keep momentum when you're experiencing a lot of sales, go and watch that video. We might put a link below for that one too. But usually when people are experiencing a lot of momentum and doing a lot of sales, they usually get cocky, right? They believe that it's going to last forever, that it's never going to go away. In reality, that is possible, but you need to follow certain steps that we explain in the other video. What I encourage everybody to do, when you're breaking your records, when you're doing a lot of sales, put a camera in front of you, put a phone in front of you, and record yourself. You need to speak to your future self, okay? And I like to do things like this. You know, I used to do this. Whenever I was doing a lot of sales, I used to say to my future self, Patrick, if you're watching this video right now, what it means is that you're probably experiencing a sales slump, and what it means is that you're probably feeling very sorry for yourself, and you're probably believing that you can never do sales ever again. Am I right? And I was watching the video in the future, and I was like, fuck, how does this guy know? And I was like, well, if that's the case, let me give you a reminder. You just finished this week, you remember the week, this is the date, whatever the date was, and we just broke a new sales record. So if you are experiencing a sales slump right now, I want to remind you what we did this week so you can turn it around and you can do it again right now. So this week we did A, B, C, D, and whatever it may have been. And then I used to say to my future self, so don't be a coward. Stop crying, stop feeling sorry for yourself, get up again and go and do some motherfucking sales. And I watched that video, right? And I was like, oh my God, that guy was mean, but that guy was me. Okay, so I gotta do it. That is extremely powerful. Record yourself when you are experiencing a high and speak to your future self. Because at some point in the future, you're gonna experience a low and you're gonna need that video. It's just a good reminder, okay? But also, record yourself when you are on a low. So if you're not doing sales, and if you're struggling to do sales, I don't know, if you are on the phone, record the phone calls. If you are knocking on doors, record yourself speaking at that door. Ideally, get somebody to take a video of you as well. It's very powerful to record yourself when you are on a low, because I always do this with people. I record them, and then I make them watch. And I ask them this question. Hey, if you were the customer on the other side, let me ask you this. Pretend for a second that you are the customer on the other side, and the exact copy of yourself, that person that you see on the video right now is calling you. That person that you see on the video right now is knocking on your door. Let me ask you this. Would you buy from your own self? No, I wouldn't. So then let me ask you this. If you wouldn't buy from your own self, do you think that somebody out there is going to buy from you? No, they're not gonna. But why are they not? Why would you not buy from your own self? Based on what you see on that video right now, why wouldn't you buy from you? Well, because of this. So what do you think that you need to change? This. Simple. Sometimes you can tell somebody what to do for hours, but then they see a video of themselves and they see how they actually do it from a video. They have what I call a big reality check, and there is nothing more powerful than that, because that's going to change everything. So once again, remember, record yourself when you are on a high and record yourself when you are on a low. One is going to give you a reminder and the other one is going to give you a reality check. Finally, we're here at the end for the last sales lesson, okay? So the last sales lesson, it's all about the power of the first impression. So previously, we already covered why the first impression is important. We now know that in sales we have 3 buttons, right? Remember that one? And we know that attitude is button number 2. And we know that when you have a good first impression, you're going to be able to push that button and you're going to be able to deliver more sales presentation, right? So in this video, I want to talk about why first impression is so important. Why is it so crucial to have a good first impression in sales? Well, it's very simple. Whenever you're pitching a prospect, whenever you're trying to sell a product or a service, every time that you deal with a customer, each customer has a specific action threshold, okay? Unfortunately, it's pretty much impossible to predict what the action threshold of somebody is going to be, because the action threshold could be completely different depending on the person that you're dealing with, okay? But what is the action threshold? Well, the action threshold is the point where the cost of not buying your product is higher than the cost of buying your product, okay? So the cost of not doing it is higher than the cost of doing it. That's when the customer has fully understood why your product or service is going to be very beneficial to them, and therefore they are able to make a decision, okay? So we don't know. We don't know when the action threshold is going to be. We don't know whether a customer is going to need, 3 or 4 overturns, or whether a customer is going to buy your product or service at the first attempt when you close for the first time. That is impossible to predict. However, what we do know is this. If your first impression is not done correctly, before you even get into your sales presentation, the action threshold is going to go up. So let me explain this properly. Let's just say that you have established a good first impression, right? Let's just say that you nail the first impression. This is what the sales cycle might look with a specific customer. You start the interaction with the customer. Okay, the impulse drops a little bit. You bring the impulse back up. You close for the first time. The customer is going to give you an objection right before the action threshold is actually hit. You overturn that objection, like I showed you previously. You reimpulse the customer. You close again. You get past the action threshold, and the customer is going to buy your product. Very easy and very, very simple. But now let's just say that you're dealing with the same customer, but unfortunately, you haven't established a good first impression. Unfortunately, you didn't come across as a figure of authority at the beginning of the conversation, and the first impression was not right at all. So what happens when we don't establish a good first impression? Well, what happens is this. The impulse level of a customer goes on the negative side, okay? You can go negative. The customer is judging you incorrectly, and at the same time, what happens? This is what happens. The action threshold of that customer goes up. So what does that mean? Before, if you had established a good first impression with that customer, the action threshold would have been right here, but because of the first impression was not established correctly, what happened is this, the action threshold goes up. So that could be the difference between, what I showed you before, which is we deliver our sales presentation, we close the first time, we simply just overturn one objection, we get past the action threshold and the customer is going to buy. But since the first impression was not established correctly, the journey is going to look completely different. First of all, the action threshold is going to go up. And second of all, our journey is going to be very different. So first, we go in the negative area right here. Then we need to re-impulse the customer back correctly. We go through some emotions right here. We close for the first time. We get an objection. We overturn that objection. We re-impulse the customer. We try to close again. We receive another objection. We go down. We re-impulse the customer. We try to close again. And one more time, we overturn that objection, and finally, we manage to get through the action threshold. But you see the difference here? If you had a good first impression, okay, this would have been a very easy sale. You only had to overturn one objection, re-impulse correctly, done. But the same person, if you don't have a good first impression, well, in that case, the action threshold goes up, and in that case, you have to overturn 1, 2, 3, 4 objections before closing that customer. Okay, so this is why the first impression is crucial. If you don't nail the first impression, you're just going to make your life extremely difficult. In fact, I've trained thousands of people working in sales, and when they come to me asking me, Patrick, I'm really struggling to make sales. Can you listen to my pitch? I don't know what's wrong. Can you please help me out? Usually, when they show me their pitch, I stop them after 4 or 5 seconds, and I always tell them this. I know exactly what your problem is, okay? And they're like, how can you know? I haven't even shown you my sales pitch. It's impossible that you know. And I say, well, I do know. Your problem is the first impression. Your introduction is not done right. You're not coming across as a figure of authority, okay? Your body language is off. Your tonality is off. Your verbal communication is off. And if the introduction, aka the first impression, is off, the pitch doesn't even matter because customers are not going to allow you to deliver the pitch, okay? And if the first impression is off, first of all, you're not going to be making as many sales, nowhere near, because you're making your life more complicated. You're pushing the action threshold up before you even open your mouth. Now we know why it's so powerful, right? But the question is, why does our first impression get affected in the first place, okay? Why? Why does it happen? Here's what happens, okay, and then hear me out. Especially if you're a beginner right now or if you're at the intermediate sales level, traditionally speaking, this is what people are going to experience in sales, okay? We got a chart here with time at the bottom, and we got attitude right here. This is your attitude. Traditionally speaking, typically, at the beginning of the sales day, we feel good about ourselves, don't we? Right? Maybe we went to the gym in the morning, we set some meaningful goals, we are ready to go, and we're very confident that today is going to be exceptional, okay? We feel amazing. We trade up here. Our attitude is very high. Then we go out there, okay? We get on the phone, we knock on some doors, whatever it is that you do. And what happens? Well, we receive the first rejection. And because of that rejection, our attitude gets affected a little bit. So we drop it. Then what happens? We receive another rejection. And again, our attitude drops. Then what happens? We receive another rejection and keeps dropping and keeps dropping and keeps dropping and keeps dropping. As time goes by, the way we feel about ourselves goes down. Essentially, we are letting results affecting the way we feel about ourselves. Okay, whereas professionals, they do the opposite. They allow the way they feel about themselves affecting their sales results, okay? So this is what happens. You continue with your day, it gets to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and then you're meeting this prospect right here. You see that I drew this green line right here. Because if you had met the same prospect there, that you had met at 4 p.m., if you had met this person right here, okay, on this line right here, if if you had met this person, let's just call it 11 a.m. in the morning, when your attitude was trading up there, well, this salesperson would have bought from that version of you. Okay, when your attitude was trading this high, this person, this customer right here, would have purchased a product or a service from you. Okay? But because your attitude right now is this low, this person is not going to match with the energy levels that you have right now. This person is not going to match with the attitude that you have right now. And this person is simply not going to buy from you. Okay? So when we let results affecting the way we feel about ourselves, the consequence is the following. Our first impression is nowhere near as good, okay? And as time goes by, our first impression just gets worse and worse and worse. And before we know it, people are going to start abusing us. Before we know it, people are going to start rejecting us very hardly. And that's what's going to happen, okay? So this is what usually beginners or intermediate people do, and you need to avoid this trap as much as you can. So if you want to maintain a very powerful first impression, what do you need to avoid? This is what you need to watch out for. I wrote them on this side of the board right here. The first thing that you got to watch out for, you need to avoid as much as you possibly can recovery time between prospects. Because when people lose that attitude, one of the main reasons why people lose that attitude is because they have recovery time between prospects. Okay, so they speak to one person, they get rejected, and then they recover from it. Whereas what professionals do, they understand that there is no point recovering between interactions, right? Because they know that getting rejected and facing rejections is part of the daily life of a salesperson. And therefore, they don't need any recovery between prospects, okay? Whereas people, when they are beginners or intermediate, they tend to overanalyze each individual interaction. And when you analyze each individual interaction, what happens? You start overthinking everything. You get confused. You start questioning yourself. And then you slightly change your style for every single interaction, right? And if you think about your style that much, if you modify your style before each individual interaction, by the end of the day, you're going to be exhausted. That's just naturally going to happen. Does that make sense to everybody? So do not overanalyze each individual interaction. Wait until lunchtime. Wait until the end of the day. Once you have a meaningful amount of data, then you can actually analyze that data. You can analyze that sales funnel, and you can draw some meaningful conclusions. Okay? That's number one. Number two, the reason why people get affected is because they believe that there is some sort of magical correlation between time and results. Okay? Again, usually if somebody is selling on the phone, if somebody is doing door-to-door or B2B, whatever it may be, if they do sales in the morning, they tend to have a good day. But if they don't do any sale in the morning, they tend to have a very negative day. Because they just make the assumption that if I haven't scored up to this point, today is just going to be a bad day anyway. But think about that for a second. That makes no sense. Because what did I say at the beginning? Or what did I say before in this video? I said this. Sales is like a sport, right? And when you watch a football game, okay, can they predict at what time of the game they're going to score? No, they cannot, right? All they know is this. If they keep playing well, and if they keep playing properly until the end, they're going to win. But nobody knows when it is that they're going to score. And the same is in sales. In sales, you don't know. In sales, sometimes you work so hard all day long, and then you perform in the last 10 minutes of the day. Sometimes it's consistent all the way through the day, but you cannot predict at what time you're going to score. Therefore, believing that there is some sort of magical correlation between time and results is simply delusional, because that doesn't exist. And the third reason why people lose their attitude and therefore have a negative first impression is because instead of focusing on the inputs, they focus on the output. Especially if you're starting out in sales or if you are at intermediate level, you need to make sure that you focus on the actions, not on the results. So every single day, you need to have a plan of action, and you need to make a promise with yourself and say to yourself, today, I'm going to focus on those actions, and that's it. And as long as I've got my plan, as long as I got the actions that I'm going to be focusing on for the day, the results are just going to follow. But if I focus on the results and I just focus on the output, the consequence of doing this is simple. I'm going to come across desperate, and hey, there is nothing more pitiful than a desperate salesperson. I'm sure that you guys have seen some of those. I'm sure that you might have been there yourself before, and it's not very funny to watch, okay? We don't want to get to that point. So in conclusion, guys, now we know if you have a negative first impression, the action threshold is going to go up. You're going to make your life more difficult. Now we also know that this is what beginners and intermediate people do. As time goes by, their attitude goes down, and therefore they're going to miss out on prospects that would have bought their product or service if their attitude was trading at a higher level. And now we know the three main traps that we need to avoid, which are recovering time between prospects, the second one, which is correlation between time and results, and the last one, which is input versus output. Focus on the inputs, don't focus on the outputs. It's as simple as that. And lastly, guys, remember, I mentioned this before, but I'm going to repeat it one more time since it's very crucial and important. If you want to have a good first impression, remember the cardinal rule, which is physiology dictates mentality, which is going to create your tonality. And what that means is your body language is going to dictate the way you feel about yourself, and the way you feel about yourself is going to dictate how people perceive you, because the perception that they have about you will fully depend on your nonverbal communication. When you're in doubt, always follow this rule and you will nail it. With that being said, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you got a lot of value from this video. I gave you everything that I have. I'm going to release way more videos like this, and like I said at the beginning, if there was anything in this video that you want me to further explore, if you have questions, you can send me a direct message, but if you want me to further develop any concept that I laid out in this video, I will do it, and I can create a dedicated video specifically to that concept. But with that being said, thank you very much again for watching this video. See you soon, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much, and have a great day.